We're making a pet for our indie game, Miszou. In Miszou, you're a rollerblader that explores the world of the fishbowl. And exploring that world solo would get quite lonely, so we decided to give you a companion along the way. Eventually, we would like to have lots of different companions you can choose from, maybe a lizard or a dog. Please tell us in the comments what you would like to see as future pets. But to get started, I got straight into sculpting. I honestly couldn't wait to get this fluffy boy going, so I jumped right into it. I wanted this cool cat to be super stumpy with cute proportions, a barrel with legs if you will. I started by blocking out his basic shapes, keeping everything loose and not adding too much detail because the camera distance in Miszou is quite far away, so adding lots of details would get lost a little bit from our view. That's why we want to focus on the overall shape and the silhouette of the character rather than the intricacies of it. All that really means is keeping a good hierarchy of big, medium, and small shapes. This will ensure that your characters have the best silhouette possible. For his little face, I also decided that to get lots of expressions, I was going to draw his eyes and mouth on a separate plane. This way the cat can have as many expressions as we can think of, and it's not too limited to his face anatomy. This works great because our game is quite stylized, but it would probably look strange in a game like Stray, where the cat is quite realistic. The rest of the sculpting workflow is really just cleaning up the shapes and working out any details, but overall pretty simple for this little guy. So the next step is to retopologize. This step takes the model from hundreds of thousands of polygons to around 3,000 to 4,000 polygons. This step takes a lot of giga brain power and is quite time consuming. In the software Maya, we take a high poly model and use the quad draw tool to reduce the polygon count by drawing polygons over the model. This ensures that the mesh is substantially smaller in size, but at the risk of losing detail. There is a process called texture baking where you take the high poly model and project it onto the low poly so you can keep all those details, but our cat here is so simple that it's not really going to make it look that much better, so we actually save some resources. Topology is also important when things have to move. We want this cat to be able to move around, so having topology where the cat needs to deform is really important. Otherwise it looks really janky. I also recommend having some live references when you're doing this, but be careful because they're often really super dangerous. Once your guy is retopologized and optimized, it's time to give them a UV map. By cutting some seams around the cat, just like a t-shirt or pants are sewn together, we can make a layer for our textures to sit on. If there's too much stretching in the seams, the texture will stretch along these planes and look pretty bad, so having a good UV unwrap is really important to the process. So once that's all wrapped up, it's time to get rigging. Once we're at the rigging stage, it always starts to get exciting. Just like most living creatures, we need to give this guy some bones. These bones will sit inside of the mesh of the cat, and you can use them to move the limbs, head, and anything else you want to move around. To do this though, it can be a long and complicated process, and things are bound to go wrong. Once we have all the joints in, however, and we've constrained all of the controls to them, we'll paint on this little guy's skin, since that's definitely important to have, and voila, you're ready to animate. The animations for this character are really quite simple. They're just little idle animations that we can put in the game and do some kind of proof of concept. Mostly just one where he's sitting, maybe one where he's a loaf, and maybe one where he's stretching. Now let's jump quickly over to 3D Coat to give him some textures. I started with some basic colors and painted in some light and shadow. This was a pretty simple texture overall. Then I drew his eyes in. This took a couple of tries, but we ended up with something pretty cute, and here's the result. Now to implement the character, we need to put the toon shader on, import the animations, and put them on. That's pretty much it. Here's the cat in the game. This character was more to test the pipeline and figure out how everything goes in the game and gets done before we make the more complex characters. There's so much more coming, so make sure you subscribe, and thank you for watching our devlogs. Go follow our Discord!